never works because you're 3, 2, 1, then you'll sort of wait there. And we are live now, though. We're live with Nate Goodger, who is in San Fran. Nate, lovely to see you. Thanks for taking some time to talk.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's good to talk in real life here. Real life.
And I'm glad that we're both color coordinated as well. You obviously got the memo.
I did. I'm fulfilling my end here.
For people who don't know you, quick intro. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, let's see. Nate Goodger, co-founder of Before You Apply. In short, Before You Apply is a couple of things. One, it's a place for job seekers to go and get inside information about companies and teams that are hiring. We kind of pride ourselves on bringing the information that's typically gated behind interviews and employment and moving that to the top of the funnel with content. For companies, what that actually translates into is we create landing pages for teams, for their teams that are hiring. We come in, we design these landing pages that their recruiting teams can use to distribute when they do their outbound sourcing, social media marketing, and things like that. Perfect.
Beautiful. Nice. And I've been on your site plenty of times over the last week, and plenty of inspiration there as well. So that's a conversation for you and I. Let's talk about recruiting. That's why we're here. The tech market in Australia is probably the most challenging and the most demanding it's ever been. Supply and demand challenges. Volume of roles across tech are through the roof there, and they're pretty consistent. We see sort of the weekly trend of job ads being posted on the major job boards towards the end of the week, because people still like getting job ads out for the weekend, and then you see a little bit of a drop off, but they stay pretty consistent. So a really challenging market for employers. Are you getting the same sense in the US? Is it equally as challenging there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It has been for a really long time. It seems to be that way even when the market isn't what it is right now. I was listening to this political science professor from Stanford talking about what Silicon Valley has kind of how it has influenced what's happening at Stanford. And he said, the vast majority of new students who are coming in are going into computer science. They're leaving, the arts and these other disciplines, and they're going right there because the moment they graduate, or even before, they're being heavily recruited by tech companies, and then they, it's just the cycle. They get into this path, and that's it's you're seeing this too, but it's just like that discipline, that skill set is in such high demand because of the types of businesses that are just being built today, that it's hard to ever see that like decreasing or going away. So I think like almost every company now has become a technology company in one way or another, and everybody's scratching their head going like, okay, how do we do this better?
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that we've seen happen here is with the advent of hybrid work and work from home, obviously it's been brought on the global situation of the last few years. Companies in Melbourne, where we are, traditionally competed with each other, and they sort of, so we've got a pretty fertile startup scene, and we've got some of what I call our local unicorns, some big players. But now we've seen businesses in Sydney advertise remotely, and they're actively then targeting the same talent who are in the Melbourne market, and vice versa. Melbourne and Sydney are two biggest cities. So the Melbourne market of engineers is now being invaded, if you like, by these really high profile, really good businesses. Canva for one, globally, sort of this unicorn now. So we're seeing the competition for that talent getting even fiercer at a local level. I think one thing that I see that they're sort of becoming quite common now is job seekers or candidates, whatever we want to call them, almost becoming numb to the we're hiring messages, whether that's directly from just the sheer volume of recruiters that are all fishing out of the same pond, or from messages on LinkedIn where hiring managers or recruiters are putting, hey, we're hiring, and here's our job, apply here. I think people are just becoming numb to this sort of thing. Is that a sense you're getting too?
Yeah, I mean, I think gosh, the we're hiring content is I don't think it's the way that when I say we, I mean like the general sense of we go about finding companies that we actually want to work for. You know, it's like, you know, gosh, man, we could get into like future of work and like all kind of like, you know, the way that people want to work now in general. But it's like, I think overall workers are being way more intentional and thoughtful about who they give their time to. And if that is the case, then saying we're hiring doesn't mean anything. You know, it's like, I could probably list 5 companies right now that if I wasn't, you know, running my business, that I would just like love to work for, because I've been following them on LinkedIn for, let's say, like an extended period of time. I have a great understanding of like how they think about their industry. I know what problems they're solving. I know how they're like building the things that they're building. I know how their leadership thinks, because they just do such a good job of like telling those stories at scale that it's allowed me to almost like step into the way that they work. Because like, I know that if I were to make a change, that's a really big investment, and that investment means a lot to me, and it needs to be intentional. And so, yes, I would say that like the way that people are thinking about work and approaching it and discovering it is now so different than a company saying we're hiring and like, come apply. It's like, I don't know. Do that.
And I think that, I also think that the way that we've been, people generally have been forced to discover products and services, the things we need, because we've all been locked down, and businesses have suddenly realized they need to do a better job of making it really clear what they do and how you can buy the something that you need from me. Our ability to self-discover and self-serve all the info we need about a company has changed probably forever. So the information that we present to companies, to potential job seekers, what it means to work here, what the people are like you're actually going to work with, how long's the recruitment process, how many interviews do I have to do, all the stuff that we know people kind of want to know. Like they want to be able to find that, and I think that's one of the brilliant things about before you apply. I think there's this challenge that I see a lot of TA teams facing, is they probably know that this stuff that we're describing is where they want to be and the stuff they want to do, but they don't necessarily correlate that to instant turnaround on the challenging roles that they've got. So they're still trying, like everybody else, to brute force their way into people's inboxes with messages to, hey, come and talk to us, and here's some content. But I think they see the stuff that you and I are talking about as the long range plan, but it doesn't solve the short term pain that they're facing. Hiring managers saying, hey, where's my shortlist? Where are my people?
Okay, so that's where I don't think that this stuff is it's not an either or. I think it's a both and. You don't have to give up short-term results to build a long-term strategy, right? Like you could do both. And that the thing that I've always thought about is like, I just think in terms of information and distribution. That's it, right? There. And so if you know what information your target audience wants and cares about when it comes to them putting themselves in market, meaning like taking that step forward and saying like, okay, I'm interested, I want to learn more. If you know what that information is, and then you also know how to distribute that information to them, all we're talking about here is packaging it up and sending it out. And so I'm not one of these people where like, maybe I have gone through this phase in the past. My thoughts about all this stuff evolve, but I think at like maybe one time I looked at outbound sourcing. It was just like, oh, that is like, you shouldn't be doing that, or that's like not the way that people want to be reached, and things like that. And like I've come around to like not thinking that's entirely true. I think it just depends on your audience. But I still believe that recruiters are the best distribution of information to a candidate, because they have the direct line to the candidate.
Yeah.
But what they're sending to a candidate, I think needs to change.
Mm.
And so anything that we're talking about here is if you're going to reach out to a candidate now with like more transparent information, because you know it's the thing that they want, well, the assets that you're reaching out to them with in their inbox can also be distributed out to use as a branding play, which is a long-term strategy. So that's how I think about this being a both and, not an either or. That everything everything you create that enables a recruiter to do their job better should also double as social media content, as things that go on your career site, that, I don't know, things that go in like other distribution channels. I think it's a both and.
Yeah, it's and I absolutely agree. And I think the follow on from that is TA teams now need to add another skill set to their armory of understanding distribution channels. You know, marketing teams internally are usually focused on consumer marketing, so asking them to cut up videos and build content, it's probably going to sink to the bottom of their to-do list. So TA teams are kind of forced to either outsource it or do it themselves. So quickly learning yourself how to cut a YouTube video like this up into small bite-sized chunks of easily consumable content. Like, it's a skill you kind of just have to learn and figure it out, and in the short term just do it.
It really is. I mean, and luckily you know, technology is allowing it to be easier and cheaper than it ever has been. So that's the benefit, you know, like I think that this is a really cool opportunity. You're calling out something that's extremely important to understand, is that I even think that the overall makeup of a TA team is shifting, where this like the creative abilities because I really don't think that anybody else is going to do it for them.
No.
And if that's the case, TA teams should be this hybrid of like tactical recruiting and creative.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, we do. If you go onto our YouTube channel, a year ago we were doing 30-minute just discussions like this with hiring managers and founders of a tech scale up we were working with. Just a conversation like this about a product designer role that we were hiring. The first next product designer we were hiring. We talked about why the company started and got some great insight from the founder about like the very first moment he realized there was a company that needed to be built, and then where the product was at the moment and what this person would be doing, and we just distributed that out to our design network. We posted a job ad on a job board with a link to that YouTube clip, and it got watched something like 350 times in like 4 days. We from posting that to making an offer was like 14 days. So this was in lockdown as well. So all interviews had to be remote and all that sort of thing. But turned it over super quick. Had some lovely people and great designers apply. The person who got the role is just, again, a wonderful human, still with the business, doing great things. But it was just an example. I think that for me was probably the wake up moment or the light bulb moment of, actually, this stuff's relatively simple. You just have to make the time to do it.
That's what it is.
You just have to. It's like that jumping off the cliff moment. You know what? Just got to take a chance and see if it works. And I actually think that this lo-fi approach, rather than the big glossy video corporate, with the voiceover production, high level production, I think we haven't really been able to do it for the last couple of years anyway. But people are a lot more comfortable. We've had to sit at home. People are a lot more comfortable with just this kind of content now that's real and authentic and genuine. It's
so true. You said something, really important, is it's simple. Now, simple doesn't always mean easy, but that's the thing, is like, I just like, I think there's this misconception about, employer branding in general, where it has to be this like big budget initiative that historically has taken months and months to get, like, in my opinion, like some like pretty meaningless things off the ground that don't really affect how candidates feel about a company. But like this ability to go in and interview people at your company, and just like get them talking about the things they're doing, building, making, creating, the things that they care about that honestly they never get to talk about.
Yeah.
They either like maybe talk about it with each other, but they certainly don't get to share it with the outside world. It gets gets people engaged. It reminds them like about why they're at the company.
Yeah.
So there's this like culture element to it too. But as far from like a recruiting standpoint, it's just like, you got to just allow candidates to like jump into your world, check the boxes they need to, and get them as far down the process as they possibly can. Because, you know, if we take a step out of recruiting for a second and we just go like, how do I buy things in my life? Most of the time, it's almost entirely self-serve. Unless we are buying something, maybe for a business that like requires a salesperson to interact and like guide us, you know. But even at that point, we want to get ourselves as far down that process as we can before we raise our hand and say, I actually want to talk to somebody. And I think recruiting needs to modernize and get themselves and wake up to the reality that like the way people discover and like buy a job now, it's not really different than the way that we operate in our personal lives. So I think there's a lot of inspiration. I know there isn't a direct line there, but I think that there is a lot of inspiration that recruiting can take from consumer, from consumer products and consumer marketing, and just start evolving so we can meet people, so we can match people's behavior. That's what I.
And the distribution channels are pretty much the same. You know, we've just been doing a big thing internally, looking at Discord. There's some great opportunities on Discord as a channel. But you know, even traditional channels, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your TikTok. Now the rise of TikTok marketing. You know, specific to perhaps to a demographic. But if that's the demographic of the workforce you're targeting, then why aren't you doing that? And I think moving away from this sort of this old school pre-pandemic job descriptions, you know, due to accelerated growth, we are seeking the services of a highly dynamic project manager. Like, that's not how people talk. Now, I think we've all become a bit numb to that. You know, our job ad language is that we create for customers and for ourselves is we try to make it really human, just like how you and I are talking now, because that's how people talk in real life. Very few of us actually talk like a Victorian era school teacher. You know, day to day. You know, we just don't. So why do we do it in job ads? Like it so instantly makes it inhuman. It's just ridiculous. But I agree with you. So consumer marketing, I've already built all the channels for us. So you know, TA are really lucky. Like we've already got all the channels there. Also LinkedIn, most of your target market, if you're in the tech space, is already on LinkedIn, so you already know where they're hanging out. So understanding the channels to use, bit of time there. There's private, public Slack channels, LinkedIn groups. You can find Discord. Like all the channels are there. You just got to do some digging. But then the production of the actual content, like the stuff you're making, can be as simple as this. Learn how to cut it up and just get it out there. Like
I really think it can, because I mean, you know, if you look at what's going to come from this conversation, so we're going to talk for 20, 30 minutes, whatever. You're talking about long form video, long form audio, short form video, distributed out in like all the channels that you're talking about. And so it's like one conversation with a little bit of back end production work leads to what feels like 10 pieces of content, you know?
I mean, 10 pieces of content that can go across a dozen channels.
Yeah, really, it's true.
I agree. But I think, but to your point earlier, I think we overcomplicate it. We being TA people, I think we overcomplicate it in our minds. I also think there's this, probably for large organizations more than startup, scale up world, you know, marketing team wants some kind of brand control. You know, we've experienced this recently. You know, brand. We want to check the the right fonts are being used and the right colors, and we want to check hex codes and all that sort of thing. You know, that stuff's kind of easy to do, but it's never a priority for marketing. So 2 weeks down the track, you got TA team going, our moment's gone and we had a chance to get all this content out, but I kind of like,
I have to laugh at that whole brand alignment piece too. It's just like, I really don't think that a candidate in this case cares. I don't think that they're going like, oh, well, this piece of content that I saw on LinkedIn or from a recruiter in my email or whatever doesn't align to like what I'm seeing on that website. And like, we're not like, it's a different thing. And I think it needs to be acknowledged as a different thing. And I mean, I've been part of projects where everyone's all excited, you know, and you're into it, whatever. And then all of a sudden there's just like, the marketing team blocks it because they're like, oh, you know, we're rolling out this initiative and this doesn't match with it. It's just like, fucking cares, you know, like it doesn't like.
But I think again, that kind of dialogue really highlights the fundamental misunderstanding of job seekers. They don't care about you; they care about them and how the job that you've got impacts their lives. Yeah, coming back to this, the fundamental question of why people move jobs, it's to improve their lives, not to make your company better. People only change jobs to improve their location. They want a different boss. They want to get paid more. They want to do more challenging work. They want to do less work if they want to go part-time. No, the reasons that people move jobs are intrinsic to them, not because are qualified. The things that are important to them might align with your mission to make the world's best, insert whatever it is you're making. But the intrinsic reasons people move jobs is to make their lives better, not to make your workforce better. So I think when we understand that, and we make job marketing less about us as a company and more about you as an applicant, then we're heading down the right road.
That's the take of the conversation right there. That was great. Yeah. Well said.
I think we forget that sometimes. We make recruitment marketing all about us. It's all about us.
Yeah.
So and you know what, sometimes you have that discussion. Perhaps sometimes I have that discussion a bit more passionately than I just did there with customers and sometimes internally. And sometimes you get a bit of the eyebrow raising, and that some people go, actually, you're right. Other people, you know, perhaps bigger business like don't care. We have brand standards that we have to align to. I appreciate what you're saying, Simon. Basically, just, you know, we have to do this or we don't do anything.
Right.
You kind of got to sort of have that trade-off, and there's trade-offs with all this stuff.
There is.
If you wait 2 weeks to get out stuff that everybody's happy with, and at least you're getting stuff out there, or do you throw a little tanty and go, right, I'm not doing it, I'm going to go and do something else, you know? So it's just a challenge. I'm mindful of your time. Last question for you. What's your predictions for the coming year in terms of changes to the TA landscape, changes to the employment or workforce landscape? What do you think is going to happen? We've seen the rise of content, of the kind of content that you guys are making. What's next, do you think?
Let's see. I don't know if this is going to be in the next year, but I do. One thing that I'm like pretty bullish on is this idea that younger generations of the workforce, so like, you know, the youngest part of the current workforce and then the future workforce that's coming in, are kind of getting tired of working for the man. And having this like control, I'm going to tell you what to do, this kind of thing, you know, whether that's like an accurate perception of like of what happens when you work at a company or not. I think that we're going to move more in the direction of like gig work, creator economy, contract, freelance, that kind of a thing, which I think creates a really cool opportunity for companies who can at least start thinking ahead, because organizing your company to not only offer that type of work, but also support the work that you're doing isn't easy if you're not built that way from the beginning, which very few companies are. I think large companies are going to have a really hard time with that because they're slow to move on anything. Startups are super well equipped to do this. But I think, you know, there's a great benefit for workers because they can work on multiple projects, especially if they're like, they have, you know, high demand skills. So they can work on multiple projects, which keeps them feeling, you know, creative and not tied to anything. They can make really good money. And they can like kind of ebb and flow with economies. And at the same time for companies, I think that provides a really neat opportunity culturally. let's see. How do I say this? I'm like, when it comes to running an organization, as you well know, the cultural dynamics can get challenging. I know a lot of companies with internal politics and things like that have a hard time with it. One benefit of having a workforce that is not tied directly to your company culture, who basically is just focused on getting work done, can alleviate that stress. I know founders have those conversations they're more private conversations about like, how do we tackle this problem? I guess I'm talking about it more publicly, but I do think that's like the direction that the labor market is going, is more like freelance gig, flexible ability to work in like project fashion.
It's so interesting you say that. It's ties into a conversation I was having with someone the other day. So imagine this scenario: you're a product business and you have all the tickets of things that you need to get built, that normally your user stories come down from the product team. All the tickets are there. Imagine if you had a publicly available list of all the tickets that need to get built, in a similar way that with Airtasker you go out and you post, hey, I need this thing picking up, but you had a community of freelancers that were vetted for skills, and you made this list of all the tickets that you need built, publicly available to them or privately available to them, and they just bid on, yep, I'll do this ticket, I'll do this ticket, what's the time frame that you need it doing, and things were getting built that way through your team of freelancers. That you had pre-agreed daily rates with them, or hourly rates, whatever it is, and you just had this freelance team quickly ripping through all these tickets and getting things built, and then your internal team is the QA putting it all together and shipping it.
That's super cool. See, that's the kind of stuff that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You just gave a great example of how that can come to life. It gets me excited to think about, because I'm a big fan of that type of work. And again, like I stated, like I think it provides a lot of value to the labor market, but then also to companies, especially like more scrappy companies who are moving really fast on stuff.
So it's interesting that we both think the same way around that sort of stuff. But I do think there's going to be constant evolution, constant change. TA, I think the short message is TA teams are going to have to just always be thinking ahead, just taking risks, get some content out there, just see if it works, and just keep pushing the boundaries of what you can and can't do.
Yep, I know. It's like, if you just start doing something, you're gonna show yourself that this isn't as hard as you think. But you're also going to start sending the right signals out just to the market that you're different. Which, when it comes back to your very first question, which about like hiring engineers and things, tech hiring and things like that, is like, I think recruiting teams largely have a hard time because they're working in like a sea of sameness, It's like, with the exception of with the exception of a couple companies, most of them kind of look the same, but they're not.
Gotcha. Cool. This has been a great chat. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
We'll share this with people. We'll wherever we post this, we'll put a link to, before you apply, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn. If people want to connect with you and talk further, I'm sure you'll be totally happy for them to do that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you.
Nate, as ever, lovely to, or I was going to say as ever, great to talk to you, because I feel like I talk to you all the time when I see your newsletters, but good to talk to you in person, and lovely to meet you.
Okay, man. You too.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.